Welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we're working on the Datsun truck. 1986 Datsun truck, Chevy motor, Ford rear end. Should be sweet. In this video, we're going to be working on the wiring. I have some surprises to show you, some changes got made, but it's pretty exciting and we're getting very close to being able to start and drive this thing. So stay tuned. So the first thing I have to show you is very exciting. Almost as exciting as the drive shaft, more exciting than the drive shaft. I don't know which one. I already unboxed it. I already played with it last night at my house, but I also gave you a teaser in one of the earlier videos, but today we're going to break into it. We're going to get it set up. Probably not be able to start, run it today, but Holley TerminatorX. So here's everything that came in the box. I did get the TerminatorX Max, which can do transmission control, which works perfect with the 4L80E, and it also does drive-by-wire, which we're not using, but it can do it. It comes with this 3.5-inch screen, which we'll use to do an initial programming, and then obviously you can hook it to your laptop and do any kind of programming you want, change any table settings, blah, blah, blah. Next up, we got the main harness. This is basically the entire engine harness. This up here is the injector harness. My engine has the Multec 2 injectors, but there's not many choices when you're trying to replace those for size in Multec 2. The EV1s are way more common, so I got the harness for an EV1. This is the oxygen sensor that comes with the unit. It's a Bosch wideband, obviously. This is the accessory clip. So this is where we can put our extra inputs and outputs. Last thing we got is transmission control. So the transmission has its own harness. The last harness up here is just a power harness for the Holley ECU. This runs all the way back to the battery. So what we're going to do is we're going to start laying some of this stuff out and see where it's all going to lay and how we're going to mount the computer and all that good stuff. I started laying the harness out, and obviously we have a few small issues. This harness is meant for a stock LS1, and we are far from stock as far as locations of some of these things. So let's take a look and see what we got. So this front section is pretty good. The only thing that we're going to have to move is one of these wires here, this one, is for a built-in fuel pressure sensor. So I guess that on an LS1, the fuel pressure sensor is up here, or they want you to put it up here. Ours is going to go back there by the fuel pressure regulator, so eventually. So this one's going to have to come out and be pulled back there. The next thing we're going to have an issue with is our ignition coils. So one of the ignition coils is right here, which is about the middle of the motor, the way I have it laid out. The other one is here. Both of those are going to end up actually being inside the firewall because we're going to take these wires and poke them through, boop, and plug up inside there. So those we're going to have to move. Let's see what else. This is the map sensor, which is on top of the intake manifold or back here around the back somewhere. So that's actually probably okay. Then we have the oil, the cam, and the knock sensor, which I actually sold my knock sensors. So we're going to have to get some more of those, but all those are okay. So then we have the crank position sensor, which is down here. So we can probably make that work. And the only other thing that I'm trying to figure out now is where to go through the firewall with the rest of the wires. So I got everything rewired, and I'll show you what I got going on. So basically, wire runs underneath, like we talked about. Throttle, there's the intake air control and the throttle position sensor plugged in. Coolant temperature sensor is plugged in down there. This is an intake air temperature sensor, so we'll end up putting this somewhere once we make this pipe here. We have our fuel pressure wire is over here now. How that's exactly going to route, I'm not sure. We got our map sensor plugged in, and then our oxygen sensor is running along this edge here, and it's going to actually go through the firewall right there. So that's about everything for in the engine bay. Pretty easy. What I decided to do as far as penetrating the firewall we're not going to penetrate the firewall, except for, obviously, where that oxygen sensor is going to go through. What we're going to do is, we're going to come through the transmission tunnel, right about there. So once we make this panel, I'll drill about I think it says a 2-inch hole to be able to fit all the plugs through. I have some grommets on the way, and we'll have it go through right there. And then basically to use up the rest of this wire, I'm going to do exactly kind of what's going on here. We'll just strap it up along the top and down this edge over here, and then loop up, boop, and the ECU will go somewhere in this middle general area. So that's everything for the main harness. I'm going to go ahead and get the transmission harness out and check that out and see what we got going on for that. So I got a lot more work done on the wiring. I kind of just started and didn't stop and kind of really forgot to film stuff. So we'll start in the engine bay. Obviously the harness was already laid out, but I went ahead and made this alternator power whatever. So I have that power cable that's connected here. It's like 4 gauge. It's going to go from there to the starter, and then it is going to go from the starter straight to the battery. So that should be plenty of power for my starter. My alternator will obviously use a thicker gauge wire from the starter. I'm thinking probably a 0 gauge or a 1/0. And then I basically have these 3 control wires. So one of these is going to be a ground, one of these will be a power, and then one of these will be a switched power that has a 470 ohm resistor in line. That's what I read on the internet. I don't know. I'll let you know how that works out. Inside. Got quite a bit done on the inside, but not as much as you would think. So it looks like I did a lot, but unfortunately all this is kind of just all the plug-and-play stuff. But I made this nice mounting area so that I wouldn't have to drill a bunch of rivets through the firewall. And also all the electronic stuff is kind of just in one spot. So we're going to come through the transmission tunnel right here with like a 2-inch grommet. We're also going to have one on the top here, which is where the coil pack wires are going to come out of there. And the oxygen sensor, which is going to come out there and go back in here. It was just too crazy to kind of wire it any other way, so yeah. But all this is basically just all the plug-and-play stuff, so, you know, all of these wires are just kind of plugged in here. All these relays and these fuses were already set up by Holley, so we only have a few wires to connect. So this one obviously is my alternator charging harness, which is going to get connected up to some kind of fuse blocks here. These wires are, this is the power for the transmission harness, and then we just got a couple grounds, so all those will get connected in this general area somewhere. The next wires we got are these ones that come out here. So basically they're going to be inside the transmission tunnel. I think that's obviously plenty far enough away from the transmission. And basically they're just the power for the ECU, so there's a hot and a ground in here that goes straight to the battery. This is another power from the ECU that they say to take straight to the battery. This powers the coils and the fuel pump, even though it won't power our fuel pump. But this will power the ignition coils, so that goes straight to the battery. This green one is the wire for our fuel pump. So it says you can wire a fuel pump up to 10 amps directly from this wire, which I doubt the fuel pump we're going to be using is going to be that big for right now. But we're going to set it up like it's going to be bigger than that. So basically this will go to a relay by the fuel pump out in the bed here, and that's what will signal the Holley to turn on our fuel pump. So the other wires we got are these wires up here, which go across. So obviously this black one is the display, which is kind of just chilling over there right now. We're going to mount that up there somewhere. These other wires are the blue wire's attack signal. The gray wire needs to go to a brake switch, which I don't have a brake switch, so we're going to have to make that. This one is the switched power for the transmission and the switched power for the Holley computer. So those are going to go on some kind of switch panel, which we're going to mount somewhere in this general area. And basically that's all the wiring I've done so far. So I haven't actually done any wiring. Everything that I've done is literally just the plug and play stuff straight from the harness. But I'm trying to get it all laid out because I need to order a few more things and obviously this is going to help me figure out what else I need to order. Alright, so did a lot more on the wiring, but as you can see, pretty much everything is all done here. I did get some stuff going out, so basically, let's go inside. I made this piece here. This is welded in. Everything's good to go. I got a grommet to feed all that stuff through like we talked about. I have the feed for the Holley coming out the bottom here, and it runs underneath back to our battery. This other feed is going to be for a fuse box, which we're going to mount here soon. And yeah, basically just got all the other wires routed. I got the wideband wire out here, and that's going to run right over to our exhaust pipe. And yeah, that's about it. So we're getting there. I got a couple more things to mount in here. We got to do the switch panel, which I think I'm just going to put up here for right now. And fuse box we got to mount. And a couple other things. So we're going to get to that. But what we're going to do right now is finish up some of the other wiring. So basically, those wires that come out the bottom right now are just hanging here. So, and this is the Holley one and the feed for our fuse box. So I'm going to go ahead and run those back along with this cable, which I just got. This is 1/aught battery cable. It's solid copper. Well, it's 100% copper. It's stranded wire, obviously. And we're going to go ahead and run this. And this is going to be what feeds our starter and our alternator. So we have one piece of wire that goes from the alternator around to the starter, and then this wire will go from the starter all the way back to the battery, just to make sure we supply enough voltage to that starter. I didn't have a problem starting it on 4 gauge earlier in the build, but this is obviously a really long run. It's about 10 feet, and if we have a gnarly cam in here, which we eventually will, then we're going to need a little bit more juice for starting. So I got 1/aught cable. We're going to sleeve it in some of this cheap protective, which I don't like, but you're not going to see it. It's under the truck, so we're going to use that. So I'm going to go ahead and get that sleeved up and get some ends put on and get all that put in. Alright, so next thing we're going to do on the wiring is get everything laid back out on the engine. I have everything cleaned up in the wiring harness and everything like that. And we're going to go ahead and get it laid back out on the engine. So, you know, let's just go ahead and use some moving magic for this. And there's all the wires ran. Still looks really clean. Super happy with it. Got a couple things still left to do. Obviously, this one's for the fan, which we don't have yet. This one is the intake air temperature sensor, which we can't put in here. So they're just kind of chilling right now. Still got to put terminals and make up my stuff for my alternator here. But, you know, that's basically it. So next thing we're going to work on is half wiring and half brakes. So I needed a brake switch, number one, for in the future if we decide to put brake lights on it, and then also for the transmission control needs a brake switch so it knows when to unlock the torque converter when you push the brakes in. So I went through a couple different ways on how to do this. They do have switches that you can mount to your brake pedal. But the Wilwood brake pedal system does not have a provisions for the brake pedal. Probably could have made something work, but I found something that I think is going to be a little bit easier, and that is this guy. So this is basically a brake pressure switch. It's made by Painless Performance, and this is what we're going to use. So basically it's just a pressure switch. So as soon as we apply any kind of pressure to the brake system, it will activate the switch, connect these two terminals, and blah, blah, blah. So we got to get that put in, which means we got to take the brake lines back apart. And I think we're going to go ahead and put it like right about here. And then what we can do is we can tuck the wiring for this and the wiring for our brake solenoid kind of together and go through the firewall somewhere over here. So I'm going to go ahead and work on that and get through. And then once we get that in, then we can finish up the wiring inside the cab. All right, so we got the brake pressure switches done. There it is right there. We passed the wires through the firewall, put a nice little grommet in there. We'll dress those up later. Basically, that's all I needed from that. So now I'm working on some wiring on the inside, and I wanted to give you guys an update because this is was a kind of confusing part for me. So I wanted to make sure I put it in here. So the alternator, it's got 4 pins. 3 of them are used. You can look up on Google which ones they are. It's pretty simple. But basically, one of them is a ground, one of them is 12 volts, and then one of them is a switched 12 volt signal, but it has a 500 ohm half watt resistor in the middle. So I wanted to show you guys how I did that, and that is this guy right here. So basically all I did was, this is the wire that goes all the way out to my alternator. It's going to hook to one of my switches on my switch panel to turn my alternator on, and basically I just soldered the resistor right there in the middle. So, and then we're going to just cover it up with some heat shrink, just like so, and we'll melt it shut, and you'll never know it's there. So that's that, basically. So whether or not it works, who knows? I'll find out here shortly, but, you know, wanted to show you guys that. Other than that, basically I've been working on the switch panel. So I got that all set up. This is the switch panel I got. It's just a cheap eBay special kind of thing. So the way mine is going to work is this switch is going to turn on everything. It will turn on the ECU. It'll give power to these 3 switches. None of these switches are actually switching power. They're all going to be through relays or something like that, so I'm not worried about the actual power consumption. But at any rate, once you turn this switch on, it'll fire up the ECU. It'll allow you to start the engine. It will apply power to these 3 switches. Obviously still in the off position. So you turn that on, you need the ECU to run, so that's basically the only one you have to have on. Then you'll be able to push start. It'll start. Then what's going to happen is one of these will be my transmission control, one of these will be my alternator, and one of these will be my fan. So basically once you get it started or soon after, you're going to go ahead and turn these 3 switches on, and then you're ready to go. So, and basically that's pretty easy. I just looped the hot side of all these. We got the wires hanging out for that, so they'll just go on the other side of all these switches. We got one big power wire that's going to go back to the fuse box, which is going to be mounted down there. And that's about it. It's pretty easy. So that's all I need right now for power and switching. Obviously we might need some more stuff in the future, and we can always modify this stuff later. But for right now and for getting it running, this is going to do fine. Alright guys, so it is about that time. Got the truck outside, seeing a little daylight, tightened up a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know what the last thing I went over was, but you know, pretty much everything is buttoned up out here. We got a whole bunch of stuff done. I fixed this exhaust pipe, put that in there. I did the coil pack wiring, so you can see they both go through the firewall. I still have to sleeve them. And they connect in here. So here's the one from this side, goes down there. Same thing on the other side. Switch panels all set up. I did fire up the Holley ECU, worked flawlessly. Got a bass tune in. The only thing that, so basically we don't have the turbos hooked up right now. So this is essentially a stock LM7 with an LS6 intake on it. So shouldn't be that crazy to figure out, but the only thing is I have 80-pound injectors in here. So there is no setting for a Deca 80-pound injector built into the Holley system. So basically I took these 60-pound injectors, used their settings, and then just bumped the flow rate up to 80 pounds. So hopefully that works out for our start. Obviously if we get past the start, then we can mess with it and everything like that. But unfortunately we can't run it for too long right now anyway, because we don't have the cooling system hooked up. But I want to get it running and make sure everything works before we take it out and do the couple things that we have to do, like put the torque converter in. I have to put a layer of paint on the bottom of the cab, blah, blah, blah. A couple other little things. So basically where we're at right now, all the wiring is hooked up back here too. So basically what I got to do is I got to put fuel in the fuel tank. I'm going to cycle some fuel through. I got the return line disconnected and set up right here so that we can just make sure there's nothing left in the lines from when we cut them and stuff like that. So I'm going to pump a little bit of the fuel into here. We're going to put the return line back on. Then I also need to set the fuel pressure. So I'm going to be going ahead and working on that. I'm going to try to get it to 43 pounds. The Holley gives you the option for 43 pounds or 60 pounds. I'm sure you can set it somewhere, you know, anywhere in the middle too, but we're going to shoot for one of those because that's what it's set up to run at. So right now, I'm going to try to shoot for 43 pounds and see if I can get that all set up. And then after that, we should be able to fire it up. I got the fuel pressure set to 43 pounds. cycled about a half a gallon of fuel through the lines. I did get some pieces out, so that was good. We did that. Other than that, I think we're set. So like I said, I got a base tune in the Holley already. I did the throttle adjustment and all that good stuff, which you have to do before it'll start. So theoretically it should start. Like I said, my only weird factor is the injector, so you know, I don't know, we'll see what happens. Oh my god, that started effortless. But unfortunately that was effortless, but unfortunately I forgot to tighten the oil drains on the turbos. Goddamn, I am so freaking impressed at how fucking fast that fired up. Like nothing ever happened. Got a little bit of smoke over here, but it's probably just from stuff I dropped on the headers. Hasn't been started in a while, so. It is also a little smoky boy from this side. But I did notice there was some oil in the blade here for the turbo, so the oil feed restrictor could still be too big. I think I have the middle one in right now, but it's not smoking from the other side, so you know, we'll have to look into that. You know, it's awesome, we have a throttle pedal that actually works too. Pretty good for just a super bass tune too. Trying to see my air fuel ratio. There it is. 14-1. Damn, it's running really good. Like I said, it's a little smoky boy, but it hasn't been started in a while, so I'm not too surprised. But we can't let it go too long, obviously, because we don't have the cooling system hooked up. But oh my god, this is bittersweet.
headlights and all, huh?
Oh, dude. I can't believe how fast this thing just started. It's the first time I've tried to start it with everything I just finished up. And, dude, it was like, boop, done.
This looks sick.
Dude, did you hear it?
Yeah.
Dude, oh my god. It looks so awesome.
As soon as I heard it, I was like, I'm going over there.
I am so fucking pumped right now, dude. It's not even fucking funny,
thing.
man.
Look at the turbo sticking up the damn headlights.
It's not even fucking funny. I'm so pumped right now.
First time.
Well, guys, that's about it. Thing started right up, fired great, running awesome, sounds awesome. A little bit more work left to do, so obviously I have to pull the motor one more time, put the torque converter in, do some painting underneath the cab, and raise the front end up. A couple other little things, but we're about ready to drive. I'm hoping next video. The June 22nd date, I'm probably not going to make. That's 8 days away, but it will be soon after that. So if the video's not out by then obviously, you know, it took me a little bit longer, but, you know, it's going to be awesome. So, pretty stoked. If you like the video, like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.